Good evening, and thank you for tuning into Normal Island Live. I'm in the studio. The time has come. We have a fantastic show lined up for you today, and I'm joined throughout by Curtis Daly.
Oh, this is incredible.
How
He's
awesome
in the
is this?
studio,
I love
right? This is the donations like on screen right now because obviously it costs money to stay in Leeds and to get here.
Yep.
So your donations have
What is
served us well. So this is really exciting. I'm so happy to be your guest tonight.
Yeah, this is crazy. Do you know why it's extra crazy? And I did originally put this in the script. You would taken it out when you put it on the projector, but I put in brackets August 2024. Do you know why I did that?
No, actually.
Because and I've waited until we were live before I told Curtis this. But August 2024 was when me, him, and Callum had our first video call to discuss the creation of
Oh,
a
was
show.
it?
Yep.
I removed the August 24 because I didn't know what
You
the
didn't know
reference was. I
what
had
it
no
was
idea.
referenced to. But I
Interesting.
remembered it was August 2024. And so we are roughly 2 years from the beginning of this show, doing it live from the studio. How fucking cool is that?
That is crazy. So in 2 years' time, we've gone from doing it on like lower quality, I don't know, webcams to a full-on studio. This is amazing with the turn left table. The turn left table.
Yes, yeah, it's big. Also, I mentioned Callum. Callum is producing tonight as well, so I think that's worth saying. It's like, it's all coming together. But we should actually get on with the show instead of just talking about how brilliant it is that this has all come together. As much as we appreciate everybody. So coming up on tonight's show, Hasan Piker is being smeared by lying right-wing Democrats and hypocritical Trump supporters. Reform UK are planning to plunge us deeper into neoliberal misery, and Trump is showing just how much he actually cares about US troops. And I believe we have a fourth story now about the Greens and their coverage in the media. Remember, you can help us grow by visiting turnleftmedia.co.uk/support to help fund our work, or by becoming a YouTube member for just 99p. Let's go on to the first story. So, right-wing influencers are shameless, and they're grim shillers who will do anything to sink people like Hasan. We live in an age of misinformation, and no one is immune to being clipped out of context, including the world's largest left-wing political streamer, Hasan Piker, or as people in the comments are now jokingly calling him, Hamas Piker. Hasan Piker has come under fire in recent weeks by right-wing Republicans and right-wing Democrats alike in an attempt to discredit Michigan Democratic Senate nominee Abdul Al-Sayed, who worked closely with Piker during his campaign. One of the clips that triggered the right wing was a clip of Hasan singing a memorial song for the late Charlie Kirk at a live podcast event. Oh, believe me, that has ruffled a few feathers. Jesus. Right-wing influencer and convicted fraudster Tommy Robinson posted the video and said, Hasan openly mocking Charlie Kirk's murder. Deport his whole family back to Turkey. The left are filth. And right-wing hack Jack Posobiec posted the clip and said, here is Hasan Piker now mocking the murder of Charlie Kirk as we approach the 1-year anniversary of his assassination. The Bolsheviks will kill us all, and they will laugh about it. Now, I'd obviously say Hasan is mocking the AI song, which was written after Charlie Kirk's death, because it's a terrible song that in some ways portrays Charlie Kirk as a figure akin to Jesus. It's very unchristian in many ways. He's not mocking the murder itself, but irrespective, Posobiec seems to think that mocking a murder victim for any reason would be wrong. Somebody died, show some respect. Except Jack Posobiec is a pathetic worm and a total hypocrite. Do not give these people the time of day. On the 25th of May 2024, 4 years after the murder of George Floyd, Jack tweeted, "Congrats to George Perry Floyd Jr. on 4 years of sobriety today." You don't hate these people enough. The way they act when someone dies, genuinely despicable. When they have to show you who they truly are, when they have to put their morality on the line, they always come up with these sort of disgusting things. It's like really terrible. You don't hate them enough. I don't hate them enough. We need to hate them more. And even when someone doesn't die, but their security is threatened, after a hammer attack on Paul Pelosi, the elderly husband of Nancy Pelosi, in 2023, Trump mocked them while his supporters laughed. And let's not forget the murder of Renee Nicole Good, who was killed by ICE agents in January. And conservatives responded by mocking her death, with J.D. Vance even saying it was her fault. And let's not forget Tommy Robinson's sympathetic reaction to the death of Renee Nicole Good.
And now she's dead, okay? It's not good that she's dead, but it's her fault that she's dead. No one else's. It's not murder by an ICE agent, it's attempted murder by her, yeah? She should have just got out of the fucking car.
But God forbid Hasan indulge in his hobbies as a karaoke singer. Now, Hasan Piker obviously gets a lot of attacks because the right wing sees him as a genuine threat to their interests. Well, not only did Hasan have to threaten legal action against Scott Jennings recently, but he's also being clipped out of context by right wing Democrats. The Twitter account Democrats for Mike Rogers tweeted, "He's not an anti-Semite. He just tells Jews to go back to the gas chambers. Is that just criticism of Israel? We'd like to know, Madeline." The video was attached. This video was attached to the tweet.
Remember 9/11. Shut up. Go back to Auschwitz. Remember 9/11. You know?
Now, I know what you're thinking. That's awful. Indefensible. And how could anyone on the left still support him? Well, obviously that video is missing some context. The video is taken from a larger segment where Hasan is mocking Israeli misinformation about an aid flotilla from Turkey that was hit by Israel in 2010. Oh, apparently we do not have video 4, which is really bad because we've just... Oh, we do? We do? Brilliant. Superb.
Netanyahu apologizes to Turkish Prime Minister for the Israeli role in the Gaza flotilla raid. Obama broke his call between Netanyahu and Erdogan, says Israel says sorry for the 2010 naval raid. Yeah, this is 3 years after the fact, where they said, oopsie, we're bad. We're our bad. Sorry. After, hey, ironically, what they said before then, in the immediate aftermath of the fucking commandos literally massacring these humanitarian aid workers on the Mavi Marmara ship in the Gaza flotilla, was the same technique that Israel always utilizes, where they come out with like the dumbest propaganda of all time, where they were like, well, these guys actually told us in our correspondence, they said, remember 9/11. They said the least Turkish sounding guy apparently told the Israeli Coast Guard, go back to Auschwitz, remember 9/11. That was their argument. Yeah. Oh, here. This is the unedited radio transmission between the Gaza flotilla and Israeli Navy on the 31st of May, 2010.
Shut up, go back to Auschwitz.
Shut up! Go back to Auschwitz! MK Lambert, thank you for the 50 gifted subs.
Shut up, go back to Auschwitz.
Yeah. Remember 9/11. Shut up. Go back to Auschwitz. Remember 9/11.
When you clip people out of context to literally reverse the meaning of what they're saying, and that's what happened to Hasan Piker there. Like the account literally clipped that out of context. There's no way you couldn't have known that that was what was going on there. Nobody is going to trust you. Here at Turn Left, one of the things we want to highlight is just how blatantly dishonest the right wing are. Not just the MAGA right wing. I'm talking about the supposedly liberal right wing as well here. And you might think, oh, well, I'm okay with that. But one day it might be you that they're lying about. Curtis, first of all, I just want to get your reaction to the misinformation about Hasan.
Well, I mean, this is just a new, not a new tactic. It's a tactic that has happened ever since social media was big enough for everyone to use, right? People clip things out of context. I mean, I think they call it clip monkey. Clip chimp? Clip chimping, that's it. Clip monkey.
Clip monkey.
God, I'm such a boomer.
Clip
I only just learned that term literally the other day and I got it wrong. Clip chimping, right? So there's a term for it. And it's really, really unfortunate because you can potentially ruin someone's life or at least make someone look incredibly bad by not just slightly altering the context, but completely changing it. Aaron Bastani was.
I knew you were going to bring this up. I was going to bring it up.
Well, you were going to bring it up, so I beat you to it. Aaron Bastani was a victim of it. Of course, no matter how you feel about Aaron Bastani right now, is irrelevant to what happened to him a couple of days ago. The Workers' Party of Britain. So this is not just a social media user. This is a registered political party, and clipped a video of Aaron Bastani. Was it back in 2014, 2015? And he made a video about Owen Smith and how Jeremy Corbyn was facing another leadership election. And the clip the Workers' Party of Britain shared was Aaron Bastani saying about Corbyn supporters, they're all misogynistic, they're all anti-Semitic, etc. And so that was used to say, this is what Aaron Bastani thought about Corbyn supporters back then. But they took the first 4 seconds off the beginning of the video where he literally says, Owen Smith said, and then says that quote, like completely removes the context. And again, I think regardless of your views of certain people, and if you're angry at them at the moment, I have a burning hatred for this kind of thing. Like if you cannot debate effectively and you have to resort to that, then you've already lost the argument because you have to lie to people. So I'm not surprised, obviously, this is happening. And I think like the right wing have always done this. Now, of course, people watching are going to say, well, of course you're going to say that. As leftists, of course you're going to say the right wing lies. But the left lies all of the time. And I would welcome people to say, what does the left lie about generally? I mean, sure, we all make mistakes now and again. I'm sure there's some people on the left who don't have much clout would lie about things. But do you see it on an industrial scale? Do you see AI generated ads from the Democrats in America about their opponents? No, you don't. But I've seen that with Republicans. Do you hear... Okay, I'll give you another example. I'll give you a few examples, actually. The way in which Republicans talk about Democrats. That, Democrats are all communist. They called Obama a communist. I mean, Obama was a center-right corporate Democrat. He wouldn't even guarantee universal healthcare, but he's a communist. You've had commentators on GB News call Keir Starmer a communist. Like, either these people don't know their terminology, which they probably don't, but they also know they're being dishonest when they're saying things like that. Now, do we say the same? I mean, one might say, well, the left calls everyone Nazis. And I will admit, sometimes some people on the left can be a bit over the top and, maybe use that word a bit too freely. But when they give you the arguments as to why they think that, I think some of it makes sense. But generally, on an industrial scale, you do not see the same amount of lying compared to the left. I'm just going to say, I've got to be real with you people, right? I can't sit here and lie. I do not see the same on the left.
Yeah. I also don't see the same sort of glorification of violence when somebody dies that happens on the right wing. I mean, people like genuinely all over Twitter cracking jokes about Renee Nicole Good and Alex Pretty in a way that just if the left will laugh at somebody's passing, and I don't agree with that, but it is also typically those who hold a great amount of power. The left targets power upwards, the right targets power downwards. And I think this is, I think it's also a microcosm of that. Like Charlie Kirk was not a individual without power. Even more so, I don't think it's even really to do with Charlie Kirk. To be fair, I don't think what Hassan was doing there was mocking Charlie Kirk. I think what he was doing was mocking the AI, like cheap
Well, I think
AI BS that came out afterwards.
I don't think he was mocking just the song. I think he was mocking, I think rightfully, the way conservatives responded after Charlie Kirk's death.
Yeah.
Erica Kirk. Look, I know people mourn in different ways, but going out to like, I don't know, fireworks and stuff and basically turn it into an entertainment show, a lot of people on the right deified Charlie Kirk. Now, look, I'm acutely aware that when we say, well, the right celebrate violence, there will be people saying, well, don't the left do that too? George Floyd, he was deified. There's paintings of him. When it comes to, I mean, when Anne Widdecombe was killed, there were probably people online making silly jokes. And I would say, look, I don't think they're comparable. I'll give you an example. I'll give you a reason why I don't think they're comparable. You mentioned about power level. That's really important. If you have random online Twitter accounts taking the piss out of Charlie Kirk or Anne Widdecombe, they are just random online Twitter accounts. And it's very easy to ascribe them to the left. But look at the sorts of people who criticize like Nancy Pelosi or Paul Pelosi. Look at the sorts of people who mock the deaths of George Floyd. They weren't nobodies. They were extremely influential right-wing figures. You even had elected Republican politicians mock the death of George Floyd. I mean, the whole sort of, let's celebrate 4 years of sobriety for George Floyd.
Yeah.
That's not a unique joke. I've seen that joke shared among so many right-wingers. Yeah. Now, can you tell me or give me an example where an elected Democrat mocked the death of Charlie Kirk? Could you show me a single Labour MP who mocked the death of Anne Widdecombe? No, you couldn't. Yet you have given examples of Donald Trump, the most powerful man in the world, mocking the attack on Paul Pelosi. So I don't want to sit here and say, yes, both the left and the right are guilty of it. I think there's context here. There's a difference in terms of level. I'm not saying the left never make jokes and mock it. That would be ridiculous. But the institutional left, if you want to call it that, do they really do it? And let's break down violence, because we hear this a lot about how the left wing are so violent. When you break down the numbers, especially in the American context, right, the biggest form of violence in America is right-wing violence, far-right violence. Like the numbers literally just prove that. In this country, we had Joe Cox was murdered by a far-right Britain First supporter. David Amos was murdered by an extreme conservative Muslim, right? I mean, people say, well, the Muslims and Islam's left-wing, right? It's like, no, I mean, just like Christianity,
it's got a right
religion is conservative doctrine.
Yes.
Aaron Bastani was assaulted, Owen Jones was assaulted. And, are we seeing the comparable level of violence? No, we're not. Can you use Twitter and online random accounts as a gauge to where violence actually falls? I don't think so. I mean, the left, how violent are the left really? I mean, we do knitting clubs. Back in the day, what were the women's suffrage movement doing? They were bombing buildings, which, by the way, liberals now, bring them up as heroes, but they would be appalled by them back in the day.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I think it's worth bearing in mind that we'll get to this later, but a random person in the Green Party can put forward a policy proposal, and it will make national news, and yet here's Jack Posobiec, who mocked the death of George Floyd, barely heard anything about it, and he's got 3.4 million or 4.3 million followers on X. Well, not a small account.
Let's talk about Jason Arde. Julie Hartley Brewer quite literally mocked his death days after he dies. Where was the outrage? Did she have to issue an apology? Is she dropped from Talk TV? No, she's not. So why aren't people saying, oh, look how violent the right wing are? It's literally mocking the death of Jason Arde. Now, again, could you find me? I mean, first of all, there's not really any left-wing pundits in the mainstream media, because there is no left-wing mainstream media. But let's just take James O'Brien, for example, a liberal, which, right-wingers think he's really left-wing.
Yeah, that well-known leftist.
James O'Brien. But would he ever mock someone's death from the right? Absolutely not. So it's not comparable.
Yeah, I think part of it comes down to the left views crime as, you commit the crime and that is the offensive thing, right? The right doesn't view crimes and it doesn't view violations of morality in the same way. The right views violations of morality as you are doing this and you are part of X group, so therefore it's bad. But when somebody who is part of my in group does it, whether that's like, you know, a white person does it and therefore it's less bad than when Hasan Piker does it. Or you know, there's examples with Jason Arde, a white professor doesn't receive anywhere near the amount of scrutiny because the crime isn't plagiarism. Not that the plagiarism was proven, by the way. That's still, you know,
even the things like the marathon runs, they were proven to be
proven to be correct eventually. But it's not for the right wing. It's not about that. It's about their identity plus that. Right,
it's the in and out group, right? It's not about the crime itself. It's about the people they're talking about.
Exactly. Yes. I do feel we should probably go on to our next story because we've got 4 to get through. So let's head on. So, Reform are setting us up for disaster by falling back on their old Tory ways. Don't forget, a lot of them are former Conservatives. Cut welfare, cut state spending, then blame immigrants to distract you when things get worse. Reform UK are not the sharpest tools in the shed, even if the toolmaker's son gave them a big helping hand until relatively recently. This week, Reform UK announced that foreign students will be banned from accessing taxpayer-funded student loans under any future Reform administration. Now, foreign students don't generally have access to student loans, but according to the Daily Mail, under current rules, non-British students can borrow tens of thousands of pounds if they have settled status and have lived in Britain for at least 3 years before starting university. What a privilege for them, eh? They get the same shitty student loans and years of dealing with the student loans company that we get. The same shitty student loans contract that the rest of us are subjected to. Well, leave aside for a moment that student loans and tuition fees are a stupid idea thought up by the former Conservatives who now reside in Reform UK. Around 7% of all our medical students each year don't have British citizenship. They're the people who will be with you if you have a near-fatal car crash tomorrow. It's worth, you know, taking their well-being into consideration. It's doubling down on cruelty to fuck over a generally productive group of ambitious young people so that older generations can have someone to blame for the policies that they chose to vote for. But Reform aren't done with their stupid, socially damaging policy just yet. This week, they have also announced that they want to prioritise British-born workers for social housing. The iPaper reported Reform UK are preparing to unveil fresh changes to social housing, with the party aiming to reserve homes for British-born workers. Under the proposed changes, British-born workers under the age of 35 will be moved to the front of the social housing queue. It also stated veterans and married couples with children will also be given priority access. Now, I'm a young person under 35, and I do not want this. The idea that I should be prioritised because I'm British rather than because I need help more is not only cruel and stupid, it's socially destructive. One of the lessons of Dickensian poverty should have been that vulnerable people are open to exploitation. The moment you make desperate vulnerable people, the moment you make desperate vulnerable people more vulnerable is the moment you hand power to criminal gangs. We've already seen this once with the past decade of austerity and rising gang crime, but the Tory rejects at Reform UK seem determined to repeat the mistakes of the past. According to The Independent, Farage has already given us a hint of how this might work in June. In June, Mr. Farage first outlined a policy proposal stating that his party would evict all foreign nationals from social housing should they gain power. He said that under a Reform government, foreign nationals in social housing would be given a 3-month grace period to relocate to private rented accommodation or lose their right to remain in the country and be liable for deportation. That's so fucked up. I'm sorry, there's no other word. That is fucked up. I want to be able to afford a house. Like, I want, personally, for me to be able to afford a house. And I want access to social housing. But not if it means turfing little kids out of their home because I'm British and they're not. Not if it means turfing a disabled person out of their home because I'm British and they're not. That's insane. What kind of degenerate, crusty old slime ball do you have to be to support turfing kids out of their home because I'm British and they're not? Like, I think that is awful. The UK already holds many children in poverty through no recourse to public funds, and it's so obvious that the housing should just be given to those who need it most. Channel 4 did a short documentary on such children last year.
I was born in England, and my mum, she's Ecuadorian.
So my parents were born in Nigeria, and then I was born in Thamesmead.
When I was little, I didn't know what an immigrant was. When I got older, my mum explained to me I'm classified as an immigrant.
Growing up under a policy that overshadows every corner of their life. For the last 2 years, we've followed 6 children born in the UK to immigrant parents who have no recourse to public funds.
Hi, how are you?
It means the families normally have to pay to use the NHS and have no access to any kind of financial safety net from the state, even when facing extreme poverty.
My dad, he works since 6 a.m. and sometimes he comes late at 10, 11. We need to pay our rent because our rent went up. Sometimes my dad doesn't have a lot of money and just in credit cards.
Go to there.
At least 9% of children at Surrey Square Primary School in London are from families locked out of government support.
A lot of our parents would work in very low wage jobs or maybe 0 hours contracts, so no stability and security within their working lives as well. And the most significant welfare right that people in this situation don't have is the right to social housing.
She said it just there. The most significant right that they have is the right to social housing. I would encourage you to watch the full video. It's only about 10 minutes long, but obviously we're not going to play it all here. Because the very next scene is people who are, I think there's 3 or 4 of them all sleeping in one room. It's just a terrible situation to put people in when they haven't got access to, no recourse to public funds. And imagine being somebody who's a reform supporter. Imagine looking at those kids, those little girls, and wanting to turf them out of their social housing where they would have proper support, and into that situation where they're all stacked up in a room together, they're struggling to heat the place just because of where they're born or where their parents are born. It's just the Tories finding a new scapegoat for their own policy failures. And we don't talk enough about how fucking disgusting it is. I think that we really need to look at how we treat poor people in general in our society, and the way that we look at welfare, the way that our discussion around welfare works. But also, I think we need to discuss the way that we treat people because of where they were born. There is a good reason, by the way, that you don't want to start turfing desperate people out onto the streets. You are just asking for an increase in gang violence, because ultimately the thing about the thing about Dickensian poverty is it leads to that increase in vulnerability, and anytime there's an increase in vulnerability, there's an increase in criminality, there's an increase in gang violence, because people are just desperate to make money. And to be fair, if it was your daughter who wasn't able to heat her home, or wasn't able to have had to take a water bottle and a hot water bottle and a blanket to bed every night because you can't heat the house enough, yeah, you would probably do whatever you could to make sure that that little 8-year-old girl was warm for the night, that you had enough money to be able to pay your rent, but also to be able to pay your heating bill. People will look after the people around them as best they can and through whatever means they can. And if you force them into poverty, ultimately what you're doing is you're feeding criminality. And it's something that conservatives have never really understood. Curtis, what do you make of Reform's approach to poverty and social housing, first of all?
Well, I think it's interesting when you said, you take a Reform voter and you want them to watch this video and see how they feel about a child, okay? A child going without, and we can turf these people out. I think it's first important to point out that most people don't know what's going on. I think your average person would say, I like the idea of fair play. No.
Yeah.
You always hear when the topic of immigration comes up, it's look, if you're an immigrant and you come here and you pay your taxes and you work hard, fine. It's the illegal immigrants we have a problem with. Now, of course, we push back and say, yes, but the problem is immigrants are not treated the same or better in which the media would like you to believe. Things like this is happening. And I am going to criticize reform in a second, but I think we'll get blindsided if we pin this all on reform. That clip is reality today. Okay, it was Theresa May that created the hostile environment. Successive Labour governments have treated migrants like crap, and I think it's probably a bit of liberal cope to say that, oh, it's just reform who are really bad to immigrants. No, migrants have been treated terribly for decades under your so-called progressive government. So it's important to note that. The policy, though, of saying if you are a foreign national and you have social housing, and we are going to evict you, and you have 3 months to do it. And if you don't, we're going to deport you. As someone who doesn't think that the Reform Party is a fascist party, that to me is a fascist policy. Because why? I want to ask you, why? Because someone's foreign born, why do they have less rights?
Yeah.
Like, take me through the logic here. Why should they have less rights? If they're coming over here, they're working, they're paying taxes, and they're doing what everybody else does, and they deserve less rights simply because they're born in another country, please give me the logical answer as to why that is. Well, unless you're a fucking fascist.
Forgive me for interrupting you, but it's not just that they're not just saying they deserve less rights. They want you to think of all immigrants as young men in their 30s who don't speak proper English. And actually, the reality is, it's not just that they don't get proper rights, but their children who don't even make the decisions are the ones getting turfed
and in
out.
that clip there, children who are born in this country, who are British nationals, would be affected.
Yeah.
I mean,
their parents,
either you split up the family or they have to go to a country they've never been to.
Yeah.
Like, this is why it's fascist politics to me. And it's again, coming from someone who hasn't said reform are a fascist party, this policy is absolutely enabling fascism, because what they're saying is the difference between you and I is simply where you were born. Not what you do, but where you're born. Yeah. And that's the politics we are seeing, which has been bolstered by Restore, okay? The consensus of if you come here, you work hard, you get treated by everybody else is disappearing. That very basic consensus is disappearing because of the emergence of Restore. And the problem is, I don't know how much consent there is for that, because again would say, look, if you come in and work hard, that's fine. But your average person doesn't know this is going on. You watch GB News, will they ever show you that clip? Will they ever talk to you about how majority of immigrants are not on benefits? They're coming here, they're working, they're paying into the system. They're a net positive when it comes to bringing money into the economy. But you wouldn't know that on GB News because they want to say, oh, it's fighting age men coming over here and raping our kids.
Yeah.
That's the propaganda they're putting out. And I genuinely believe there's a lot of Reform voters who may look at that and say, I don't agree with that. But the problem is it's the media propaganda that underpins it all. I'm absolutely disgusted by these proposals.
Yeah.
I also, I mean, to talk about, because you sort of had that with also student loans. The funny thing about that policy is, foreign nationals don't really get student loans. There are very small examples which you pointed out, but by and large they don't. So why are Reform doing this? It's not really a cost-cutting exercise, is it? There's not much money to be saved here. In fact, it's so important that we have foreign students because they are literally propping up our university at the moment. If we didn't have foreign students, we could not fund university, right? We rely on them. They pay, most of them don't get a loan, they pay higher rates than we do. So without them, we'd be screwed. So what are Reform trying to do? Are they trying to save money? No, they're not. What they're trying to do is, one, undermine education, because the right wing do not like academia. I think the last couple of weeks have really shown that. The right wing do not want an education for people in which they question the state. We've heard people like Swella Braverman who say that our education needs to be more pro-British. What they mean is they want to instill people to love the state. And university is a problem for that, because you question a lot of things, and that comes through education all the way through to university. But secondly, it's more red meat to people because there's a cohort of people in this country who love to hear you taking somebody else's rights.
Yes.
It's the what do we call the crab mentality. There is no policies in here for young people. There's nothing about debt relief. There's nothing about reducing or abolishing tuition fees. There's nothing about, offering policies that help British people. It's about taking something away from those who seemingly don't deserve it. And where does that lead to, Ben? Where does that end up? It ends up coming after everybody. So if you're a British person who's thinking, well, do you know what? Maybe foreign people shouldn't get social housing, shouldn't get this and that.
Yeah.
It's only a matter of time until it comes to you. In fact, we're seeing it already. What did Reform announce last week? That they were going to cut disability payments. They were basically going to get rid of PIP.
Yeah.
And that wasn't just for foreign-born people. No. That was for everyone. Yep. And that's the end goal for right-wing parties, politicians. They start with the immigrants because most people would be like, well, it's not me. I'm all right, Jack. Doesn't matter. But then they come for you in the end. And if you have a class-based politics which says it doesn't matter what you look like or where you're from, but your class position in society, that is where you can protect everyone. So for me as a leftist, I'm like, I want to improve the material conditions, not just of British people, but for everyone. Whether it's globally or in this country. I want to see more workers' rights for migrant workers. I want to see better healthcare, better housing for migrants too, because at the end of the day, what divides us is not religion or ethnicity or where you're from, it's our class. In fact, in order to stop the elites and the oligarchs, you have to stand with your migrant brothers and sisters. You just have to. There's no way about it.
Yeah, I think that they deserve our solidarity, not least because, like I said, if you and I got into a car crash tomorrow, we're liable to be treated by somebody who might not have settled status in the UK. There might just be a thing. I really hate the phrase you brought it up. I really hate the phrase "fighting age men."
Yeah.
Because I remember reading a story about somebody called Rayan who was 21 years old, and he'd come here on a small boat. And the reason that he'd come here was because he'd had a gun held to his head by the RSF. And basically told, you're going to fight for us or we're going to, blow your brains all over the ground. And he's technically, because he's 21, a fighting age man. Bullshit, is it? It's classifying that guy as a fighting age man. No, he's somebody who is, and by the way, the RSF uses child soldiers as well. But portraying that Sudanese man
it's a loaded term to paint a picture to people.
Yes.
Rather than saying a 21-year-old man who's 21's young.
Yeah.
Right. In fact, we were talking about clavicula earlier today before the show. 21-year-old man, still young, right? Yeah. And we were saying how he could be a victim of this, the capitalist system. I know it's an entirely different conversation, but 21 is young. But if you use specific language, which is 21-year-old fighting age male, it paints a different picture.
Yeah.
To basically push the idea that foreigners coming over here, killing and raping our kids.
Demonization.
It's a very, very insidious, toxic idea, which the right wing, which GB News and other outlets push. But that clip from Channel 4 shows you the reality, which is that there are young children who are being punished for this, who are being punished for lies that are being pumped out to the masses, and lots of people are gobbling up, and they're voting for the parties who think, if I take something away from somebody else, someone that has a different accent to me or looks different to me, that somehow means that my position will get better. It will not. The way they treat immigrants is the way they would treat you if they can get away with it, and we're fast approaching that.
Oh, yes. It is worth saying that one of the things that they've come out and said is they want to build more social housing. I think there was a commitment to something like 50,000 houses built a year. But the problem
50,000.
Yes, but the problem is with that, one, it's nowhere near enough. But also, when we're talking about this, we're talking about it as a systemic issue for reform, because reform's voter base are elderly people whose wealth is wrapped up in property, right? So if they come in and they build loads of houses, that will devalue the property of the people who are their voter base. So they're not going to do that. They are lying about, their intentions.
But that's why they've said, instead of saying build more houses and build more social housing.
Yeah.
They're saying, no, we're going to kick certain people off the list
Yes.
because they don't want to expand the social housing supply because that affects their social base. Which is why, as you pointed out, if they do want to build more social housing, it's a pithy 50,000 because that's not really going to make a difference. But that's the interesting, and that's why it's also important to point out, like the right wing are very clever because they tap into that idea of, I feel like someone else is getting something which they don't deserve. And they're using that to, instead of improving everyone's conditions, i.e. if we were to mass build council houses, that improves everyone's life. Maybe not the pensioners who may lose the value of their property, but if you're someone in the private rented sector, or you've bought a house, or you're in the social rented sector, everyone benefits. Cheaper rents, cheaper housing, more abundance of houses, right? Especially council houses. That benefits people, but it doesn't benefit their social base. So instead of dealing with that systemic issue of building more houses, it's like, no, let's just kick foreigners off. Let's just kick people who don't deserve it off. So they keep the same amount of housing, protects their own bubble, their social base, whilst also feeding red meat to their voters.
Yeah, it's all feelings over facts
for
the voter base. I feel like we're on a wavelength here, but I should move us on to the next story because we do have them to get through, and then we've got to go to the comments section. So let's go on. But before we do, it's 2026, and we really want this year to be a big year for Turn Left. We want to be more ambitious than last year and to really put ourselves on the map. We would like 2026 to be the year where we can have a studio and we've got part of a studio here, and for our contributors to be paid for the work that we do. Our support over the years has, your support over the years has been amazing, and we are ready to take this to the next level. You can already see the level we're getting to here. It's absolutely incredible. And by the way, none of this would have been possible without your help, without your donations. And even me traveling here and staying near here was funded through you, and I can't thank you enough for that. You made literally all of this possible. We do rely on small donations, so if you want to be part of a media organization that seeks to destroy the oligarchs and is on the up, then please head over to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support. There you can support us monthly on Patreon, or there is another link for a one-time contribution. It all helps. Thank you so much. You can become a YouTube member for just 99p as well, and thank you very much for that. So let's go on to our next story. Now we're going to cover a story that we haven't managed to cover but has been ongoing for several weeks, just a prelude. Trump just sent a message loud and clear to US troops. Fuck you, do what I say and quit whining. Now, you get to watch two British leftists react and give our thoughts to that. Conditions aboard the USS Lincoln have been deteriorating for weeks, with US Navy personnel unable to access basic hygiene products and reports of food shortages. Trump has had them deployed for 270 days without stopping at a port or getting shore leave. The recommended length without stopping at a port, by the way, is 30 days, according to CNN. The ship may break a record for the longest trip away from its home port for a US carrier since the Vietnam War. That record was set just months ago by the USS Gerald R. Ford after that ship completed a 362-day deployment that included operations against Iran and Venezuela. It's part of a pattern. The US Navy increasingly asking its aircraft carrier groups to exceed the service's recommended deployment duration of 7 months, according to a CNN analysis of deployment announcements and the USNI News Fleet Tracker. The Navy has denied that there is a large problem on board, despite multiply corroborated reports that 2 sailors have attempted to commit suicide by jumping off the high decks, and these are big ships, rather than continue to serve in such squalid conditions. MS Now got in touch with some of the families, raising their concerns.
All he's really told me is there's a time where he was only eating half a cup of rice and 2 tortillas.
That's the mother of a sailor on the USS Abraham Lincoln, one of the aircraft carriers that's been deployed to the war in Iran. It appears as though their deployment has been extended for a second time with no end in sight. I spoke to about a dozen or so family members of the 5,000 sailors and Marines who are on the Lincoln, and they told me about some horrific conditions on the ship. They said that Their loved ones are telling them about moldy showers, a lack of hot water for weeks at a time, non-operational laundry facilities, toilets that aren't working, a lack of food, and that sometimes their loved ones are standing in line for 1 to 2 hours to get into the ship's store, and once they get there, they're lacking in basic hygiene supplies like toothpaste, soap, and deodorant. They also talked to me about the exhaustion that they're worried about their sailors and Marines facing. These guys are working 12 to 14-hour shifts. Many of them haven't had a day off in months, and the flight deck on an aircraft carrier is extremely dangerous. You have high-speed aircraft launching and landing on the flight deck, and they're worried that this exhaustion plus the low morale could lead to accidents that could potentially be deadly.
They want our support, and part of that support means we have to have the tools to do our job. That means the fuel, that means the food, right? That means the food, that means the toothpaste and the deodorant, that means all of it.
A spokesperson for Navy's Fifth Fleet says that he understands that this has been an extremely challenging deployment, but they have made chaplains and mental health teams available for the service members, along with fitness classes at the gym. He says that anything that has been broken has since been repaired, and that there have been a few issues with supply, but that's because of the geography of where the ship was located and also logistical concerns. But he says that the ship is able to meet any sort of mission tasking. The families that I spoke to said that they really want the conversations right now to be about the service members and not about the stockpiles of weapons and money. But most importantly, what they really want is for their loved ones to come home.
Like, you can push the military, you can push these people, but make sure that they have what they need. They can't just do these things for themselves. They're stuck. You've essentially stranded them out there. And you're like, well, deal with it.
When I was doing the research for the story, one of the things that really struck me actually was how a lot of the mainstream media did actually try to downplay this stuff. And actually, if you look into it, CNN and those who did the reporting, the USA Today, among others, have corroborated their stories quite well. Like, it's pretty unlikely that all of these people are lying about the conditions. And on top of all of that, US service members shared photos of their food with USA Today. And it makes for pretty grim viewing. This is not a normal food ration for a US sailor, and they have confirmed that they are being fed leftovers from previous meals as shortages worsen. Just look at that and tell me that eating like that after 9 months at sea with no breaks wouldn't have you feeling shit. And then imagine that the toilets aren't working as well. The conditions seem pretty grim, and these sailors are risking their careers in order to raise the alarm. However, Donald Trump dismissed their claims and said that they should be deployed for even longer.
Well, no, that ship is moving. No, they're not. That ship is moving right now, or very shortly, and it's being replaced with another very similar ship. No. Not nearly long enough. Thank you, everybody.
Curtis, can you see how much Donald Trump loves the troops? Can you see how he's thanking them for their service? As the Americans say, they always say, oh, thank you for your service to troops. And then they treat their troops like that.
Oh, you're telling me Republicans don't give a shit about workers? Is that what you're saying?
Shocking news, isn't it?
Really?
Yeah.
No, of course, the whole patriotism and loving the troops, you see it from British conservatives, you see it from American Republicans, that it's about the love of war, not about the people serving the war, which is why you have many veterans who are currently on the streets. They're not well protected after they come back from doing their time, essentially, because these people don't care. It's kind of the same thing as conservatives being against abortion, because apparently life is so precious, but as soon as they're born, though, fuck them. Any social programs, welfare programs, fuck them.
Yeah, that's how they feel.
I'm trying to work out what was on that plate. I mean, one of them looked like a insole shoe. I couldn't work it out, but that was disgusting. What I find very funny is America has the biggest, most bloated military in the world. Endless spending, by the way. Americans love MMT when it comes to war. So there's endless spending on the military budget, but it doesn't go to the workers. Does it go to soldiers who need the meals to function? No, it doesn't. Where's all that money going? Well, it's going to private contracts, isn't it? It's going to corporations who are profiting off of war and then using propaganda to say, well, we need to keep fighting these wars and we need to recruit because it's about our patriotism, it's about national security. Well, I tell you what, healthcare, right to basic needs such as food, is also a national security. You know, whether it's domestically, I mean, no Republican nor Democrat, apart from a tiny few, support universal healthcare, for example. And when it comes to this scenario, specifically when it comes to the military, the workers themselves are not being looked after. How is that for national security? I mean, look, even if you wanted the best out of your soldiers, how are you going to do that if they don't even receive their basic nutritional value? But this is just the Republican Party. Well, it's not just the Republican Party. This would happen to the Democrats too. It's the political system which we operate in, which is endless money for the fat cats and endless money for big business and corporations, but not the individual person.
Yeah, China, by the way, is going to become the global hegemon largely because it doesn't do things like this. When they spend on the infrastructure and they are paying for the infrastructure. They are not paying infinite profits to a corporation that then, you know, will eventually maybe build a bridge. But you know, I mean, HS2 is one of the best examples. Like China's managed to build masses of high-speed rail. You can look at a map of China and how much high-speed
and
rail
how quickly they've done it as well.
Yes, yeah, and we've been trying to build like one line of high-speed rail for decades, and we can't do it because there's so money just gets sucked up into private contractors. And it's the same with the military, and it could actually, in many ways, put us in a great deal of danger, not just with the military, but with infrastructure in general, because when you cut these costs, it just causes so many problems. The military for ages didn't have proper boots. Like the footwear that the squadrons were being given was terrible for years. I still don't know if they fixed that. But invariably, when you spoke to people on the doorstep, you know, back in 2019 or whatever, you'd speak to them and be like, I can't support Corbyn. He's IRA, you know, he supports the IRA, some vague nonsense about the IRA. When actually a Corbyn government would, I think, have looked after those troops a lot better.
Well, it's almost disappointing that there isn't a growth in class consciousness when it comes to veterans. Seeing whether it's, you know, Trump building up his new ballroom and how wealthy he is and how much he looks after his friends, going to endless wars, yet the soldiers themselves are not being looked after. But I guess that is one, they are obviously being indoctrinated by the state. They kind of have to, don't they, to be, you know, sharp and ready. But also, you know, propaganda works. This is the thing, though, and this is why MAGA and Trump is so unpopular, is things like this. It's another example of just not taking care of people. When it came to inflation and the cost of gas prices, for example, he was at a rally and people were saying stuff like it's, you know, 4% inflation on gas prices, I think. Maybe I could be wrong about that. But he simply just said, so what? Like the fundamental thing in which the Democrats were rejected on. Because of all of the talk about how the Democrats were too far left on social issues, complete crap, by the way. It's because the Republicans did a pretty good job of making it about the economy. It was similar to 2016 when Donald Trump was criticizing trade deals. It wasn't TTIP, it's because TTIP is like the European version. But there was NAFTA, CAFTA, all these trade deals that benefited large corporations and ship jobs overseas. Donald Trump, whilst lying, did criticize that in the campaign trail. And Hillary Clinton, the most establishment politician who loved these trade deals, had to defend them. And there were people thinking, oh my God, Trump has pivoted to the left of Hillary Clinton. Fast forward to 2024, you've got Kamala Harris, who is an extremely underwhelming candidate, underutilized Tim Walz, who has actually had some kind of charisma. And of course, you know, it was slightly different there. It wasn't just based on material conditions. A lot of it was to do with the genocide in Gaza, and lots of people stayed home. But I don't think when it came to the economy, you ask your average person, people thought that Trump was actually going to do something about it. The reason why they're so unpopular now is because they're so open about how they do not give a fuck about the average person, whether it's the military or whether it's your bills and whether it's your gas prices.
Yeah, I think charisma does play a part, but I'm sure you'll agree with this. It just goes to show that cost of living, if you put cost of living at the
It's
center of
everything.
that is how you beat these people. And this is, I mean, if Turn Left has a message the past few years, that is how you beat these people. Deliver and deliver hard on cost of living issues. Zoran Mamdani is always the classic example to go to. You make it obvious what you're doing. You deliver for it. Like Andy Burnham has done some things that sort of speak to that, and it has been massively successful. I've got criticisms of Andy Burnham, but
the immediate jump in popularity, whether it's the party polling or individual polling, is because he did focus on cost of living.
Exactly.
And obviously, again, we're not fucking shills for Burnham. They're very small things.
Yeah.
But it does go to show that ultimately, that's what people care about. The right wing can try and distract you when it comes to trans people or the latest culture war. In the absence of class politics or in the absence of talking about the economy and cost of living, yes, that will be successful. But the way to combat it is not to agree with these people or pivot to the right. Because again, Anna Kasparian, she said that part of the reasons why the Democrats lost is because, the Democrats went too far left on social issues. Complete bollocks. I actually remember an ad from the Democratic Party during the 2024 election saying a man can't be a woman can't be a man. And they felt like, if we just give in to this idea, if we capitulate to this, then we'll be fine. Like Kamala Harris was asked about trans people and she did the most milquetoast defense and just avoided it. Like the Democrats very consciously didn't lean into progressive social ideals. They lost because, one, of course, Gaza, but two, they were just utterly weak on the cost of living. If the Democrats said, we are fucking pro-trans like fuck, and I'm wearing a queer flag, but I'm going to raise the minimum wage because the federal minimum wage has not risen. It's $7.25, and it's been like that for decades. If they say they're going to tax the rich, if they say they're going to expand Social Security, if they say they're going to do universal healthcare, free at the point of use, Medicare for all, they would win in a fucking landslide and no one would be talking about culture wars and trans people.
Yeah.
But the Republicans can talk about trans people because, one, their hatred of them, but two, with a lack of coherent message on the economy from the left, or they're not left wing, but the liberal side, then of course the conversation's going to be dominated by these things.
Yeah, the pansexuals who put food in your pan, if you'll forgive the pun.
Yeah.
But like at the end of the day, it is true. Like no matter how right wing of a MAGA conservative a troop might be, not your average troop, but a troop might be. At the end of the day, they've got to eat. They've got to have healthcare. Their family's got to eat. Their family's got to have healthcare, and they want their kids to grow up in a nice area that's not poverty ridden.
I saw a really interesting article, or an excerpt from an article, and it was a Republican voting family that voted for Mamdani. And of course, that the median voter blows our minds because the reason why they voted Mamdani is because they felt that Mamdani was to the right of Andrew Cuomo on the economy. And you think, huh? So Mamdani was talking about lowering the cost of groceries, rents, etc., right? And they said, well, we equate the left of wanting things to be more expensive. So they voted for Mamdani over Cuomo.
God.
Now, of course, that is unfortunately a bad media that doesn't educate people.
True.
But I guess the semblance of truth maybe is that, well, the left wants higher wages for workers and higher taxes for the rich.
Yeah.
That could be inflationary. Now, of course, I would dispute that, but that is generally what the media would tell you. Oh, well, you want to raise minimum wage? Well, the price of a burger is going to go. Oh, you want to tax the rich? They're going to leave, or they're going to put prices up. So I guess in a way you could say, oh, the left want higher prices for that. But Mamdani was like, no. He was talking about lowering the cost. He was talking about, scrapping regulation for small businesses. That is something the left would never touch in this country. The left is very squeamish about talking about regulation. Now, of course, we've had a discussion.
Yeah,
it's kinds of regulation, of course. But Mamdani was like, oh, throw regulation in the bonfire, which doesn't make sense. He said, throw a bunch of planning laws into the bonfire.
Yep.
And there's a populist left-wing argument to make that, right? Yeah. And that is something that you really cut across lines, because if you go, oh, I thought a right-winger would say that, there's too much regulation on business. If a leftist said that, but of course the kind of regulation he wants to keep is really important stuff.
Yes.
then that to me is a very good left populist message. I mean, Mandani, again, we always glaze up his campaign, but it's not just about like the aesthetics of it. I think it was the stuff he was saying.
Yeah.
He was saying stuff like, I want to reduce the cost of things, and we'll do it by maybe, reducing regulation or making small businesses, making it easier for small businesses to grow. And that's not usually the left-wing terrain.
Yeah, that is really interesting what you're saying, that they perceived sorry, I'm stuck on that point.
It's crazy.
They
It's crazy.
perceived being right wing as lowering the cost of living, and
Yeah.
being left wing as raising the cost of living.
And maybe
absolutely. And I was
maybe
gonna
we
say,
don't understand that.
That makes a huge amount of sense in a media environment that is controlled and operated by the right wing, right?
Yeah.
Because if the right wing is setting the narrative, then they're going to highlight where the right wing, or tell people that the right wing will lower their bills and the left wing will make everything more expensive. And it makes a lot of sense, but often we don't follow through on those arguments.
Yeah.
And I think we need to start following through.
The left needs to do a better job of seeing how we're perceived.
Yes.
I think that's one of our weaknesses, is that we seem to think, look, if we just get the right policy, if we just get the political party that's purely socialist, then it will win people over. And I think we need to understand the left isn't in a particularly good position.
Yep.
The aesthetics and aura of the left, I hate using that word aura, but is not particularly popular. And I think we need to understand, how are we perceived to the electorate? And that is a very interesting thing. That in the case of New York, that the left were in favor of higher prices. And instead of just being dumbfounded by that, we should understand why. And I think it's really important to see how we're seeing, because let's be honest, a lot of our conversations are an echo bubble. Echo chamber, even. We're talking to each other.
We are literally in a
bubble right now, echo chamber.
Yeah.
So we won't know how we're perceived. And I think it's really important that we find out, what do people think the left wing is? If you ask me, what does it mean to be left wing? Okay, it means don't be bigoted. It means treat everyone equally. But fundamentally, it means taking on power and redistributing wealth and power. That's what I think left wing is.
Yeah.
But I don't think the majority of people think that. And I think it's important that we grasp that, so we can begin to change that. Of course, in the backdrop of the corporate media doesn't help, but this is why we have Turn Left, That's why we need to grow.
That's what we're here for. That was a brilliant point to
Thank
end on,
you.
I think, for this. Really, really well done. Okay, so let's go on to our final story of the evening. Is the Greens' commitment to open democracy damaging their ability to fight the good fight? The Greens are under fire once again in the mainstream media, with everything from scaremongering fan fiction to misinformation about their policy proposals. In particular, papers are reporting that a policy proposal was put forward to take away police tasers and pepper sprays. This has caused uproar among the media, who regard it as an attack on the police. LBC published an article which stated, Greens branded mad after calling for police to give up tasers and pepper spray. The policy proposal says the party should pledge to withdraw lethal tools and tactics, e.g. tasers, pepper spray, from police, and should reduce reliance on police, with the aim of eliminating this reliance. I was actually asked to go on GB News earlier today to talk about this, but I would have had to defend the policy proposal, and I don't really agree with it. I didn't really want to do that. And I said, look, I think you're going to have trouble finding people who are going to defend it, because the problem is that anyone can submit a policy proposal. It only takes one person to submit a motion like this, and then the media latches onto it and pretends that it's the Green Party proposing the motion. It's not the Green Party proposing the motion. It is one person who has proposed a policy. Just because a policy is proposed by a single member doesn't mean that it becomes policy or even gets debated at conference. The policy proposals get prioritized, and the odds are, they get put in order of priority. I explained that badly. The policy proposals get put in order of priority, and the odds are that this one will be fairly low down the priority list. It's quite likely to be thrown out without ever being heard at conference. But the media has, of course, latched onto it, and James Hansen on LBC was on the bandwagon talking about vague allusions to madness.
The Zach Polanski could end up in government. The Greens, if they've got, 10 to 20 MPs, even if they've got only 5 or 6, that could make all the difference. You could have Zach Polanski in an Andy Burnham or Labour-led cabinet. That is balmy. That is dangerous.
Zach Polanski posted the same clip and said, same journalist was questioning if disabled people are really disabled on the Jeremy Vine show this last week. These people who just churn out smears to protect the billionaires day in and day out. Change is coming. So I'm going to add a little bit of context to that, because James Hansen did actually respond and said, and I haven't got a graphic for this, so apologies, I'm just reading from my phone. Both the Greens and Reform seem to believe that any scrutiny of them or criticism is an illegitimate smear. It is such infantile politics, no wonder they're both dropping in the polls. That was James Hansen's response to Zach Polanski there. Curtis, what do you make of these continual attacks on the Greens, and what do you think the purpose is?
Well, I mean, James Hansen's tweet saying that, oh, this is the reason why Reform and the Greens are slipping in the polls, because it's infantile to, attack the corporate media. That's not why. The reason why the Greens have lost support is simply because Andy Burnham. We all predicted this, by the way. We're all riding that wave. Of course, the Greens' job is to sustain that attack on the Labour Party. One, because the biggest reason why people left Labour to the Greens is Gaza, but also whether he's going to be sufficient on the economy. And crucially, the fact that Andy Burnham is to the right of Keir Starmer on climate change, which is mind-boggling to me. He wants to, open up North Sea for drilling. So these three big issues, economy, which I think Andy Burnham is at his strongest, won't go far enough, but he's obviously, appealing to people. When it comes to Gaza and climate change, the Greens can really hammer them. So it's not because Zach Polanski is calling out the media for being bullshit. In fact, part of the Green Party's popularity was Zach Polanski calling out the bullshit on the media. I mean, that famous clip of Zach Polanski on ITV with bare balls. And he said, this is why people hate the media. You don't get to 230,000 subscribers, members. Subscribe. That's a very successful YouTube channel.
Yeah, the Green Party.
Members without being boisterous and aggressive. That's not the reason why. He's also doing that centrist slot, which is like, whoa, the left and right are doing the same thing, therefore it's the same. Look, Hansen didn't actually give any critique, right? That video clip he showed, he goes, it's balmy. I don't mind when a journalist critiques policy, because in a minute, I'm going to heavily critique this, okay? I've got a spicy take. But it's the lack of scrutiny, I think, from the corporate media. And it's the fact that, oh, you imagine Zach Polanski as Prime Minister? But that's not quality journalism, and it's insanely biased. So that was what Zach Polanski was critiquing. He's absolutely right. The corporate media is utterly shite. But he was doing the whole big brain centrist thing, which is like, well, because Reform attacked me and the Greens are attacking me, they're both shit. But Reform attacking you because they're being held to account because Nigel Farage was given £5 million from a crypto billionaire, right? And he didn't want to talk about it. And Zach Polanski is saying, you're not even scrutinising us, and you didn't do your journalistic basic practice, which says, yes, that a potential motion can be proposed by one single member out of 230,000. It has to be debated, it has to be voted on, and even if it gets voted on, this is the crucial thing, even if people vote on this policy, which is incredibly unpopular, by the way, 80% of people don't support this policy, 8% do. Even if it makes Green Party policy, it doesn't make it to the manifesto. And that is where the leadership team and a bunch of other people will decide what goes into the manifesto. They can drop the more contentious policies and go ahead with the more popular ones, which is really important, right? Green Party policies are not set based on what goes in the manifesto. It's their broader one. Okay, they can say abolish borders, for example. And whilst that was a motion that hasn't been voted on, that was something that he was attacked for, the Green Party could technically vote for a motion that says abolish borders. It doesn't mean it's going to make its way to a Green government or a manifesto.
Yes.
If you have basic journalistic integrity, you would know that, rather than your random fucking Twitter person knowing that too.
Yeah.
That's my criticism.
Yes.
I have a criticism of the left, though.
Can you hold on to the
I can, because I feel like you want to say something.
Because I want to get lay into James Hansen a little bit. Have you
Okay.
seen that? You brought up really eloquent points there. I'm going to bring up something that's just a laugh. There's a meme that goes around on Twitter every now and again that's like it's set out like a play, and it's like liberal fills pants with shit. And then
Yeah.
right winger goes, you shit yourself, bro. And the left winger goes, yeah, you've shit yourself, bro. You've filled your pants with shit. And then the liberals smugly going, I'm being criticised by both the right and the left, so I must be doing something right. And it's like, no,
your pants full of shit.
Your pants full of
Yeah.
shit. You've like loudly shit yourself in public. That just because you are being criticised by two different sides of the aisle does not mean that you are correct. I did also want to say, I asked you about like the purpose, what the purpose is. I think you're right. It's to like keep the Greens down. But I also think that there are some in the media who do understand that the Andy Burnham government was a product of Polanski's drive or effort to drive the Overton window to the left. Like, without Polanski...
But I don't know if any mainstream journalist has ever acknowledged that.
Yeah, I don't know if they would publicly
Yeah,
acknowledge
yeah.
it, but I think that privately some of them do understand that if they allow Polanski to rise again, they allow another push to the left, if that makes sense.
No, I mean, I think the purpose of it, though, it's hard to say. I mean, it's just a story for the mainstream media, right? Of course, we know that the corporate media is biased against the left, but not every story is always presented that way. It's not always a bunch of men in suits saying, "Oh, how can we attack the Green Party?" It's often not how it works, right? It's more because it's a story that we can just attack any political party, right? It's not that the mainstream media won't criticize reform; they absolutely will, and they often do. So the point of it is just, you know, it's a funny thing to talk about, and it's easy just to punch on a political party. But I want to get to my criticism of the left now, because I think that's really important. It's not necessarily the critique of the Greens. I think it's the left as a sort of a broader picture of the left wing. But what I'm saying is more pondering. It's not necessarily that I completely believe it. I'm just wondering, because I think it's important to bring up. Is you know, too much democracy hindering the left in this era? In an era of populism, in an era of the attention economy and the lack of attention, in an era of personality, democracy is getting in the way. Now, this sounds quite bad because it sounds like I'm being anti-democratic. I mean, it's not what I'm trying to say, but here's an example of a very fair democratic process, which is that one person, seemingly it's one person, is proposing something, and they have a debate on it, and it either gets voted on or it doesn't. A normal political process. And yes, the media are so anti-democratic, and they fail to grasp basic democracy, that this is just how political conversations work, right? However, it's one thing to say media bad, right? Okay, but what can we do about it? And it does worry me. I had the same criticism of your party, and I think they really, really fucked it up. They were insanely bureaucratic, and I don't like to be right in politics, because often I can say quite pessimistic things. So I like to be wrong. But one of my predictions for your party was it was going to be too democratic, too bureaucratic. It was not going to meet the moment that it needed to. They had 15% in the polls. They initially had 800,000 signups. They could have had a real class-based politics that could have met the moment, and the bureaucracy completely floundered it. Then you had the Green Party become quite popular, getting to 21% in the polls. Now, again, that's not an average. They were probably 15%. But one poll had them at 21%. They exploded in membership. And because Keir Starmer was so inept, unpopular, the Greens were meeting that moment. Now, of course, it's not their fault that Andy Burnham is now Prime Minister. They have to, you know, go back to the drawing boards. But things such as the media picking up on a deeply, deeply unpopular policy, does that mean that the left are embracing too much democratic systems in an era in which it doesn't command it? Right now, I'm wondering, do we just need a socialist party, a socialist democratic centralist party? You have your internal private debates, right? You make sure that none of it gets out, and you fight like hell within it, and then you fucking agree on this, and that is it. And if those don't get on board, you fuck them off at the movement. And you basically say, look, it's not a completely anti-democratic process. You democratically come to a decision, but that's it. You know, it would be wonderful to live in a world where political parties could have open policy debates. That should be healthy. But in the reality we live in, it doesn't, I don't think it works. Now, again, people could say, but it's important we defend democracy. I understand that. But there are forces that want to rip up even just the liberal democracy we have, which is obviously, liberal democracy is a democratic deficit. It is not a good system. We want to have a better system. But we have the likes of Reform and others that are going to bring in far more stringent authoritarian policies. And it does worry me that, you know, debating, let's be honest, incredibly unpopular policies and then getting dragged through the media through it seems like almost an unforced error. But then I also don't have the answer, because what would be the solution in the Green Party? You know, does it mean that, okay, you have to have 1,000 backers for a motion to then be debated. But then, you know what? The media will just say, well, I mean, a motion where kill all puppies got 10 votes in the motion and they run with it, whatever it is. The media's always going to find a thing. I'm not suggesting that any Green Party men want to kill puppies, by the way. But I just worry that is there a lack of left-wing action, which is that, look, we just need to be unified on something and we take it to the people. Is open democracy hindering us? And it scares me to say that maybe it is.
I don't know that the point you're making is necessarily an anti-democratic one. I think when you say too much democracy, what you mean is actually not structured enough democracy. Thomas Paine, in his it was The Rights of Man, when he was writing a response to Edmund Burke, this was during the French Revolution, famously said something along the lines of, a constitution is to democracy what grammar is to language.
Yeah,
it helps shape the language into something readable.
Like mob rule is not more democratic than a parliamentary system.
Exactly the same
Some
way,
people would think that's the case, but it's not.
Yeah, the same way that language, if we were to use it without any kind of structure, would just become gibberish.
Yeah,
it's not. It would work. We could do it, but eventually it just devolves into gibberish. It doesn't make any sense. And I think that is part of the question that we face here. I'd also point to, obviously, in one of the previous stories that we've covered tonight on this show, we looked at the way that Reform have announced their housing policy and their policy on student loans. The way that Reform announces policy is handing it to the press, knowing that the press will announce it to the world. And I think that tightly controlled policy messaging is something that the Greens need to learn from. And Zach Palanski started to do this a little bit, to his credit. The Greens need to do more press conferences and say, okay, well, our official policy will be announced to the press at this date, this time, and that is what the policy will be, because then there's a very easy answer for proposed policy. It's just, well, you will find out what our proposed policy is at the at our press conference.
But the difficulty thing here, though, if Zach Palanski says, okay, I'm going to do a press conferences on policing,
and
then says we are going to make sure that they absolutely have tasers or whatnot, they'll be like, yeah, but what if there is a democratic process still happening and it gets voted on and it gets into the manifesto? The leader is contradicting.
Sorry, I'm not saying that they should do a press conference on this specific issue. What I'm saying is that once so Zach Palanski can say our specific policy will be announced on the let's say the conference is in October, and he gives a press conference in November, or maybe a series of press conferences. The crisis, the crisis in our supermarkets on food poverty, announcing the policies around that. The crisis for the climate, announcing policies about that. Declaring a national emergency of cost of living, or of fuel prices, and then announcing the policies about that. Framing it in the same way that Reform does, an alarmist thing that the media can latch onto, make it something that
when they did their climate conference, it did make the rounds in the media.
Exactly.
However, the slight caveat there is the media still want to run these kinds of stories in which, removing tasers from the police will have no institutional power in the Greens. I'm pretty confident it would get voted in favour of, right? So Zach can obviously, talk about this thing, which is really popular, which is, the climate crisis. I'm not saying the climate crisis is popular, but tackling it, and income inequality, fine. But the media's still going to run stories like this because they want to paint a picture, which is that even if these policies don't have any institutional power, they want to say, but there are a bunch of cranks in the Green Party, and this is the sort of policies that they really believe. Oh, they're going to put a face on saying they care about this thing, but it's actually the woke lefty cranks who believe this. It's the same story in which many Jeremy Corbyn supporters left the Labour Party and then went to the Greens. The narrative, which is that the Greens used to be a lovely huggy party and now they're a bunch of terrorists, Islamists and woke people. Now, part of that hatred is great because it means, oh, they're taking the Greens seriously rather than just calling them a cuddly party. But I do think they want to paint a picture, which is that Zach Palanski can talk about sensible policy, but the Greens is underpinned by this nonsense and these crankeries and whatever it is. that still is going to do some damage, unfortunately.
And I think maybe you do make a good point about keeping the motions private, strictly private. Maybe having an increase in the number of people that you have to even put forward a motion in the first place. Have to
Yeah,
propose
I
a
want to
motion
see
in the
something
first
like
place.
that.
But also making sure that it's a secret motion
Yeah.
until conference, so you can't know until but I suppose that creates problems because then people can't prioritize the policies which are important. It's a difficult thing to
Well,
put
yeah.
catch-22.
I mean, I'm
in
not
the
here.
current media environment, though.
I mean, I'm not here suggesting what the Green Party should do. I don't know all the internal structures, and I have more questions than answers. And that's what I say. It's not necessarily a Green Party issue. I think it's the broader left issue. Is that, look, is open democracy, is that hindering us in a moment in which it's like people are almost calling for more authoritarian leaders? It sounds awful
No,
to say.
I don't think you're calling for
or
more authoritarian leaders.
strong men.
I think you're calling for more structure. It's the Thomas Paine thing again.
Yeah.
It's like just because you pick somebody to be the leader and you pick them for the qualities that you're looking for, and you might have a constitution that looks for those qualities, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're picking somebody to be authoritarian. What you're doing is you are choosing traits that would do well in a marketing meeting, and
Yeah.
that is what you need to. The left needs to get good at marketing and having people that it puts forward who are good at marketing. I do feel like we've probably overrun by quite a bit.
Yeah.
So let's go to the comment section. And Callum, apologies for the length of the show, guys. We get talking, and it's so different talking here and talking, to each other. It's so different, and it feels more.
Well, it's more back and forth. It's better. This
Yeah.
setup is just better, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah, I do like it.
I love this to be full time one day.
We'll get there. We'll get there. Hi, everybody.
Well, that was such a hi everybody.
Just it's because while you've been talking for the last hour, I've been sat in silence, so my voice is just warming up again. Just on the previous, just on that last story that you're talking about, I think there's Callum, do your job while you're here, and then we can talk about it and kill two birds with one stone. I'll come to the super chats in a minute. Vicky's made a really good point, which is that there's no way that you can make sure that none of it gets out. If members are talking online, someone can always join in and get in those groups. And I think one of the problems is that even if you, I mean, Christ, even if you made every member of the Green Party sign an NDA before they engaged in any policy discussions, because anybody can become a member of the party by simply signing up and paying a monthly fee, it wouldn't take much for journalists to, or anyone else that wanted to get in and to see these forums.
And to be honest, I suspect as well. I don't know if it's me being conspiracy, but I think there are a handful of entryists in the Green Party who are leaking messages. So I think
it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me if there are people who have literally become members of the Green Party simply to create policies like
100%.
that cause the ridiculous news stories. And as everybody within the party points out, and as Zach has pointed out multiple times, like just because somebody puts forward an idea for a motion does not mean, one, that it's Green Party policy, or two, that it's ever going to become Green Party policy. And I think you've both already pointed out this one particularly. It's not particularly popular. I think it's a lot of bollocks. Like, most people don't think that this is a good policy idea.
Yes.
But I do think that we have to be really careful in.
Can you turn? Sorry, do you mind turning yourself up a little bit? People saying you're quiet.
Oh, okay. I'll just speak closer. I understand the concern about, in terms of, is the party too democratic because it keeps the door open for stories like this? But I think we have to be really careful not to inadvertently take democracy out of the party simply because the media are going to jump on things. I think something that Zach has been really, really good at doing, well, we know his communication has been, fantastic since he became leader of the party, and the Green Party comms generally have improved. And I think eventually, I think it's one of these things that every time the media do this, if people within the party just keep reiterating, this is just getting a bit silly now. You know, like that moment with Ed Balls where it's like, this is why everyone hates the media. Like, this just isn't how the party works. And if you want to learn about how the Green Party works, go to, greenparty.org.uk and click the join button, and you'll find out all about how we work on the inside. And just keep pushing that message of, this is just ridiculous media spin. Nobody's buying it. Like, just, let's talk about the real issues. I do think eventually it will become like, I mean, we saw it with all the attacks on Zach Polanski, right? We went through a period, and it always happens when there's an election, but we went through a period not that long ago where we were debating on here whether Zach should be apologising or not for stories that had come out about him in the media, and they were constantly trying to grind him down, but eventually they got bored of it. Now they're not making personal attacks against Zach Polanski. Now they've decided that the thing to attack the Greens on is, a Green Party member has suggested maybe we should have a conversation about something. Oh no, and next week it'll be something else. And I personally think that what the party need to do is they need to stick to their guns and say, you know what, we're just going to keep on keeping on, because every time a story like this appears in the media, the Green Party respond by saying, this is ridiculous, come and join the party to find out more, and more people join the party. So
yeah, that's possibly just the response.
Although, as far as Burnham's concerned, I think you are right that there is also this fear that if the media allow Zach and the Greens to get too big for their boots as quickly as they have done earlier this year, that there's a concern that it'll move the Overton window again, which is why they're trying to trash the Greens. But to be honest, they're gonna trash the Greens anyway. Jamie Alice has said Zach Polanski isn't even a socialist; he's a liberal, and that's still enough for the mainstream media to be terrified of him. I mean, I would probably disagree with that assessment of Zach, but there are lots of people who would make that argument. But even then, like it doesn't matter. What matters is he's proved himself to be a legitimate threat to the on the left, to the establishment, and that's what they don't like. And it's funny, isn't it, how you hear reformers all the time banging on about establishment stitch-ups, yet the media don't seem to attack reform anywhere near as much as they go after the left. But we're supposed to believe that Nigel Farage is the establishment, right?
No, we're supposed to believe that, or that they're trying to make us believe that.
That Nigel Farage
is anti-establishment. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to do much convincing me to think he is the establishment.
Yes.
Yes.
So we've also got I'll come to super chats after this story. So MK said we cannot engage this slander and libel. We need to set the conversation, not react to smear campaigns. And I just thought I'd bring it up because I thought it was interesting. I just wonder what your thoughts were on that one. This is obviously about the fact that we're repeating the story, right, about the policy. And my view on it is that, well, yeah, because
But it is a bad policy, though. I mean, I think
the policy's nonsense anyway. Even if you read the fine print of it, I mean, it's still not a great idea. But it helps us have a wider conversation about the ways in which the media are trying to attack the Green Party, which I think it is an important conversation to have.
It is important to try and identify flaws from the left so we can be better. It is important to see where's the weakness or where's the perceived weakness, and it's not just echoing their smear campaign, because we are calling bullshit on it. Like, we know it's not Green Party policy. I've attacked the journalists who've just basically said, oh, this is the Green Party is proposing it. They're not using their journalistic integrity to understand this is just one member. But it is important that whenever there is an attack, we should always be like, how can we do better? Because I think one thing that we need to learn from the Corbyn years is most of our response to the smears were, they're just smears. We're a threat to the establishment, they suck. Obviously, I mean, that's just clear, but there's no point of having turn left, I think, if we're just going to sit here and be like, yeah, the media's bad. Because that's not an engaging or helpful dialogue. It's just pointing out the obvious. I think we now need to get really fucking smart and be like, okay, but what can we do going forward? Like, Jeremy Corbyn was subjected to the most heinous smear campaigns, right? But when Jeremy Corbyn left the leadership, would those smear campaigns disappear? Would the media change? No, it's still here. And once again, we knew that Zach Polanski was going to be smeared. I predicted that his poll rate, his personal poll ratings would go down. There's no left-wing leader in this country with the current media apparatus can have positive polling. You know, there was a brief moment where Jeremy Corbyn was on net zero, literally, for like a week. Okay, but majority of the time he was very, very unpopular. We need to like understand that's the case. So in order for us to actually be successful, yes, we need to look at, is there ways we can improve? And sometimes we might not be able to. Sometimes it is what it is. That is just the media. But I don't think it's helpful to be like, oh, let's just say fuck the media and that's it. That's not good enough. That's not going to win us any elections or fight for a better world or politics.
I mean, we've got to look at it in more depth. And earlier you brought up the question of why those people who were interviewed in the USA were like, well, I associate the right wing with lowering my bills and the left wing with raising my bills. Why is that perception a thing? That comes in the context of a right-wing slanted media.
Yeah.
We've got to be able to look at that, look at the way that we're viewed and be introspective and go, okay, so how do we make those changes? How can we use the principles of marketing and the principles of success stories across the world, not just Zoran Mamdani, but for example, the Greens in Lewisham, for example, who were really successful with the way that they put forward their campaign.
Because I think a bad response to that particular median voter would be like, oh, you think the left are in favor of higher prices and the right is in favor of lower prices. And we say, that's media propaganda and that's it. Okay, that's not helpful. A smart response, which I think what Mamdani basically did, I don't know if he knows about that particular person, but the smart response is to say, oh, you think the left are in favor of higher prices? Or look at me, I'm going to slash taxes on small businesses.
Yep, make it super clear.
Yeah, I'm going to, scrap some kind of regulation that makes it harder for smaller business, etc., etc., and show, no, we've got the policies that are beneficial to everyone and we're going to prove it to you. And like the Zach Polanski's recent video was brilliant, in which she says, tax the big banks to give more space to small businesses. He didn't say for workers, he said small businesses, because he's identified, and this is what the left need to understand, that small businesses and self-employed people are overwhelmingly right-wing. They are very, very right-wing. And we cannot lose these people to the right wing. So we need to say, look, it's small businesses versus the oligarchs versus the Amazons. And I thought Zach's intervention recently was tax the big banks and give some help to small businesses. I think that's really important because I think the left are seen as anti-business. Now, the left are not anti-business, but we have allowed us to be framed as anti-business. And I don't think it's good enough just to say, yeah, but the media is bad though, isn't it?
Yeah. Even capitalism, even anti-capitalism is not anti-business.
No, it's
business
not.
And capitalism are not the same thing. The same way that capitalism and markets are not the same thing.
Exactly.
This is like.
Well, I think socialism is more pro-business than fucking capitalism,
because
capitalism is pro-monopoly and pro-corporation.
Yes.
Right. Socialism is pro-small and medium-sized businesses.
Yeah. Yes. Right, Callum, go on.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, we could probably keep on that for a while, but let's
absolutely.
Have some of
We could
comments. Some super chats. Michael has gifted 5 turn left memberships. Thank you for those, Michael, and welcome to those of you that got them. Specs has also gifted 5 turn left memberships.
Thank you, Specs.
Antifa Vegan Boy,
yes,
10.
Legend.
Thank you very
much.
Thank you. And that's actually it with the super chat. So thank you for all of those, everybody. Where to? Let me have a look. Yeah, no, let's move on to another story. Well, actually, I'll bring this one up because MK also said the solution is getting proportional representation at any cost. It's the only change that actually matters, and I strongly agree. I think it's important that we keep mentioning proportional representation.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think it's high up the list of changes. I wouldn't say it's the only change that matters, but I would say it's high up.
I think it's definitely one of the important ones, though. Yeah. We've been asked to make a quick correction. So, Ben, when you were talking earlier about the number of days that we were talking about the American warship story. It was the USS Gerald R. Ford. I think you said that they'd been deployed for 362 days instead of 326 days. It was written as 326 on the graphic. I think it was just a slip of the tongue, but
yeah,
quite
sorry,
a few people
that
picked
was
up
my
on
bad.
That, so
yep.
So just to clarify, the USS Gerald R. Ford was deployed for 300. So I'm doing it now. For 300
Fake news.
26 days. Yes,
not
yeah.
362.
Apologies, guys. I'm reading from a teleprompter that I'm a bit new to, so that might have been it.
No, it's so good.
All excuses, isn't it?
Jacqueline's had to go now, but she did ask earlier. She went, Kamala went too far on social policies. When did this happen?
Well, that was according to Anna Kasparian and other people.
Yeah, I think Jacqueline's in disagreement with that.
Yeah, me too.
Me too. Yeah.
Legala DeVille has said, I'm too focused on myself to care if an immigrant gets social housing before me. Well done to them. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's that thing of like people not understanding that it's prioritized based on your vulnerability. So a veteran with no legs will get housed before an an undocumented migrant who comes here on a small boat, because they've got no legs, because they're a disabled person.
If you were to ask me, okay, you've got a British-born person and you've got an immigrant, and an immigrant was in a far more desperate situation and needed social housing more than that British-born person. For me, I'd say, look, ultimately, I'm not someone who doesn't believe in open borders. Sorry, I'm not someone who believes in open borders, or I don't have an issue with states per se, but I do think that every human being is equal, and I care about rationing on need, and I don't give a fuck where you were born. But I would say maybe the majority of British people no, there's an inherent sort of deservedness for a British-born person, and I don't know if there's a way you can logically get someone out of that, because that's just the way I feel. And there's a lot of people who say no, but just by being British means you should be the higher pecking order. And that's probably something which I don't know how I could convince a right winger to ever change their mind on, or someone who's not necessarily right wing.
I think you've got to persuade them with, because of course their response is going to be, oh well, if you just give support to everybody, then everybody will come here. One, that's not really the way the world works. But two, that's not a problem if you do something like what Spain has done and offer vocational training to low-skill immigrants that come to the country in areas that are required. So they have them deployed to areas where they are, I don't know, let's say there's an area that specializes in making concrete, but they don't have, and they could
you can just grow
open another workers. Yeah, you grow your concrete. Good on Mike Graham. I hope people understand what that's a reference to.
If you don't understand that reference, I'll be so disappointed.
But when you're going to grow your concrete, if you want to open a new concrete farm, then you
Mike Graham's there, isn't he?
Mike Graham will be there to teach them how to grow their concrete. Vocational training is a really important part of that. You cannot just have people just coming in and just endless support, obviously, but rather you support them into an industry that needs help. But that would require some state investment in education, which probably not going to happen, because we can't, in this country, we can't do anything except make cuts, austerity, blame disabled people and immigrants.
Investment is a dirty word for us, apparently.
Yeah, yes.
Yes, indeed. Sorry, I'm just having another look. There's just been, I know I said let's move on from the Green Party thing, but there's just been some ongoing conversations back and forth in the chat as well about the actual content of the policy document and how much of that's been taken out of context, as it usually is by the media. Obviously, I think there's some concern that we're passing judgment based on what we've read in the headlines rather than the actual content of the document. I'm trying to find the document. I can't find it. So if anyone can point me to it on the members' site, I will certainly get.
I've read some of the.
We can go through it, but I think Ben.
Quotes.
I was just going to say, I think you've had a look at some of it, haven't you?
I have. I've read some of the excerpted quotes, and it is a lot about redirecting, which is, by the way, already green policy, redirecting resources away from punitive structures of policing towards like community help.
Well, this is it's basically defund the police, isn't it?
But that's kind of disarm the police is a harder case to make. You know?
No, but what I'm saying is, I mean, obviously, one of I don't think it was Hanson himself. Like, this is just the Greens going towards defund the police, and like, there's been an entire discussion like woke 1 versus woke 2.0. And I think once again the media are misunderstanding what the difference between woke 1 and 2. But like, for example, defund the police, I've always hated it as a slogan. It's a terrible slogan. Politics is about strategy, but the policy that underpins it is absolutely fine. Like, it's true. Like, the police should not be solving every single issue. Like, the mental health services should be there for, whatever. And as a policy, majority of people would support that, but as a slogan, it's terrible. So even if the policy is about like, it's more about changing the resources, then but if the headline is grabbing that taking tasers away from the police, that's still bad politics.
And the bit on prevent is already Green Party policy as well. So
yes, true. There's a very sort of like UK-US centric head on the, or rather US centric head, where people take policy from the US that makes a lot more sense in the context where the NYPD, for example, had and the LAPD had a budget and more military equipment than a lot of national armies around the world. When your police budget gets that bloated, that's a very different context to the UK, where we just don't have enough police officers.
But I would still argue it's a bad slogan for America.
Oh no, I agree. I agree, it's a bad slogan.
But obviously, the context are different.
Is quite different.
But what I'm saying is, like, people are generally quite authoritarian. They love like strong police, right? And I think any leftist policy that seems like it wants to strip that away, I think has to be rethought. It's not the policy again. Look, if there is more sensible quotes within that policy, fine, but I think you're still allowing yourself to be interpreted one way when it's packaged that way. Again, defund the police in America. The actual policies are quite sensible. It was packaged in a way which is almost a psyop.
Yeah,
if I'm honest. So if that's the same case here in the Green Party, that is bad politics.
Yep. And I hate if we call Zoran Mamdani's sort of approach woke 2, woke 1's approach is very much, I'm going to put a slogan out there and it's up to you to figure it out. And that is the problem. When what you need to do is you need to put the obvious bit first and make it.
Which is why the media has got woke 1 and 2 wrong. They think, oh no, woke 2 means change a policy to woke 1, and that's never. And as someone who I prefer the woke 2 era, I've never ever said that, because there's lots of woke 1 policies which are good. It's just the communication side. That's to me the difference between 1 and 2. That's my view. But I think like politics is literally communication. And you're right. Instead of just saying, we're going to put this out there, you can figure it out. That to me is woke 1. Woke 2 isn't get rid of the policy. Woke 2 is like, no, let's fucking package it in a way. Even if it sounds socially conservative and the policy isn't different, fine with me.
No, it's fine. We've touched on this, I think, a little bit already, but earlier on in the conversation about the initial conversation about Hasan Piker, there was some conversations about right and left, and some disagreements in the chat about definitions used to describe Democrats. And Actual Intrepid's just pointed out the right wing is so prevalent in the US. Any Dem that is even centrist is better than what they have right now. Do we want people even more to the left? Sure, but centrist is better than right wing. And obviously, I think it's worth remembering that obviously we're using terms left and right. I think everyone at Turn Left, we are aware that the Democrats are not left wing in the sense that we would expect from any sort of traditional.
But isn't Intrepid saying that like a centrist Democrat is still better than a Republican?
Yes,
because obviously when we criticize the Democrats, like, yes, they're generally better than the GOP, because the GOP are like Christian ISIS. They are literal, like, insanely extremist party. Like, they're insane. They're fascist, like, just beyond fascist. So absolutely, like, I mean, I think during the 24 presidential election, I think I got a bit of pushback, but I was like, look, I would vote Democrat. I would. We don't have a parliamentary system, where here I'd vote for the Greens. I ain't voting fucking Labour. But in America, in a presidential system, it's literally going to be Republican or Democrat, and especially what the Republicans like now, I would be like, I would just vote Democrat. Hold my nose.
I would, yes, under the system that they've got, and if we were talking about voting for the president, yes. However, I would also say if you were somebody who was under Kristen Sinema's You familiar with Kristen?
Yeah, the one who celebrated voting no to raising the minimum wage. She did like a
That's the one. She's actually doing more damage than having a Republican sitting in that seat. I genuinely think she's doing more damage.
I mean, I was talking about more in the general election. I guess it's a bit different because I'm not as familiar with American politics.
Yeah.
In a general election, I would just vote Democrat, and that doesn't. I mean, someone's going to call me a shitlib. I'm sure they will. But that's the failure of the fucking system.
Yeah.
You know, right? If they had ranked choice voting or a different kind of system, you bet my ass I wouldn't vote Democrat. So like I agree with you, Intrepid. Like a centrist Dem or right wing Dem is still preferable to the GOP, but that ain't good enough though. They're still a pro genocide, pro corporate shitty party. And even the so-called left, like AOC, someone I genuinely quite like, is also kind of shit on foreign policy, shit on Israel. She voted in favour of the Dome, the Iron Dome, more funding for the Iron Dome. Even Marjorie Taylor Greene criticised that. Yeah. And I'm like, that's the best left can offer? Now, of course, I would happily vote for AOC as president again, because I'd vote blue. But that's like their left wing, where they're still voting to fund Israel. Like,
yes, I think that was an erroneous vote.
Yeah.
Yes, Callum, what else we got?
So Vicky has said people keep giving Hasan friendly advice to be careful about how he frames things, but he could say literally everything perfectly, and they'd still clip chimp him to mean the opposite.
Be unapologetic. I think that's really important. Yeah. Being unapologetic, because vibe matters a lot more in many ways than substance. I know we've just done the woke 1 versus woke 2 thing. But woke 2 makes everything obvious, and then you add good vibes to that, and it's
well. The slight caveat here, right, is Hasan representing himself. Yeah, do what the fuck you want. But Abdul El Said, who recently got elected, put out a statement, kind of distanced himself from Hasan Piker. And I think what Hasan does need to understand is that he's not just a stream anymore. He is a political figure. He has attached himself to political campaigns and has been successful. And the worry here is that even though he's just taking the piss out of an AI song, not actually mocking Charlie Kirk's death, right? We understand that context. His behavior now can be implicit to candidates he's supported, and that could be a headache for them. So I guess all I would say is maybe Hasan needs to think about the fact that he's not just a streamer for himself now, right? He is attached to political campaigns, and if El Said were to lose to a Republican, and because it was a stupid Charlie Kirk thing, that would be really unfortunate. So like again, I don't know like how much of a difference that's going to make, but I just think that Hasan Piker, like he is a political figure now, and there are going to be political campaigns. I don't know if it's going to be hurt by it, but like just to be aware and in the strategy, right? I think the way he communicates himself, the way he thinks about strategy must be with a political figure now, not just a streamer. Now, again, that could be some woke 1 bullshit, to be fair. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned about hang on, let me just see if I can find it. You mentioned about some comments that Aaron Bastani had made as well that had been taken, that had been clipped and sort of taken out of context. Michael's asked, do we clip when Curtis repeats what Aaron says?
You bastard! I'd have to do like we'd have to do a double rebuttal for me.
It's like
Michael,
and then that would be clipped out of context. So it's just an infinite loop.
There's an infinite out of context.
Oh dear.
Let's print screen this and then like change his comment.
Change his comment to
something completely different.
We're commenting you out of context.
I was going to say because Michael's never said anything we could take out of context, right? If we went back and had a look, I mean,
no, definitely not.
Just on the whole Charlie Kirk thing, Autumn Leaves has said Conservatives made the Charlie Kirk song, and now they're complaining that Hasan has sung it.
He's just singing their song, right?
Like,
paying his respects.
He's celebrating him and paying his respects. What more do Conservatives want?
All right.
Arthur's pointed out, the left will just say something like, "I'm glad they're dead," as they were a scumbag, and the right will make AI slot mocking the dead.
Literally.
Yeah, that's true as well. Yeah. Yes.
Jamie Alice says, and this is a really important point that I know Ben is a massive advocate for. Facts and logic don't work against the right. In order to beat them, you have to mock them. You have to make them look ridiculous.
Yeah, fully on board with that.
They are.
Vibe. Yep. Yeah.
And just finally, Emma has said, "Oh, look at the two of you in the same studio. Brilliant."
Hey, let's go.
Let's go.
Let's go. Somebody asked earlier on if I was hiding under the table. I can confirm I'm not.
Callum?
I'm
You in
not
there?
there. I'm not there.
Stay down there. Right. Carry on.
We get some bad accusations, don't we? That like I've apparently been hiding you in a cupboard. Apparently, like I'm a massive landlord. Apparently, comes to our viewers. We get some like really scandalous accusations.
Oh, now sorry to. I've not
Keep 'em
seen this, but Deus Ex Ollie's just said Curtis does a great impression of Aaron doing an impression of Trump. Can we see this one?
It's fake news. It's fake news. I'm Aaron Rustani doing Donald Trump. I'm not being Donald Trump. I'm Aaron Rustani doing Donald Trump. Does that sound like Aaron Rustani doing Donald Trump?
If anything's going to get clipped out of context,
That's
going to
get clipped out of context, isn't it?
Or maybe clipped into context.
I don't know what that means. Get clipped into context.
Yes.
I appreciate that. It was funny. I don't know what it means, but it got clipped into context.
And on that wonderful note, I'm going to call it a night. Thank you both.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Absolutely excellent. Right. Yeah. Let's go and close out. Curtis, thank you for joining me tonight.
Oh,
This has been
wonderful!
Awesome.
This has been brilliant. Your first time in the studio on the turn left table. It's been amazing, and like we want more money so we can make this happen all the time.
Yes. Yeah.
That is my shilling. That was a bad way of shilling. The host usually does the proper shilling, don't they?
Yeah.
I like money. Studio.
It helps. Please.
Please.
No.
Get Callum a chair. He's stuck under the table.
Yeah. Thank you. Of course. Thank you to all of you for your kind contributions. Really do appreciate it. Thank you to Curtis for joining me, and thank you for Callum. I appreciate you spending all that time under there. Your neck must be hurting at this point. Of course, thank you to all of you. Thank you for your kind donations. And if you do want to continue to donate, remember that you can go to turnleftmedia.co.uk/support, where you can make a one-off contribution or become a patron, a regular patron of the show. Patron of the show, I should say. Or, of course, you can become a YouTube member here for just 99p. And please do as well check out the Discord. It is equally important that you're, as well as the financial support, that you're on there, and so you catch the things that we're putting out as they go out, and you can be part of the discussion. There probably will be a voice chat after this where several members of our group, several members, people in the comments who are regulars, will be having a chat, and do definitely go along to that because we want to encourage Turn Left to build community as well. If it's not building community, what is it for? With that said, please remember to tune into our Normal Island show. This is our Normal Island show every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, starting at 7:30 p.m. Now, you have been watching Normal Island live. Have a good evening.